What's up guys, in this tutorial I'm going to be explaining how you can make your very own obby in Roblox Studio. I'm going to be explaining every single script that we're going to be needing, and I'm going to be writing out the code for you guys so it'll be super easy for you to follow along and make your first Roblox obby. So I'm going to add in a part by clicking on this part button right up here on the top, and you should see something like this. If you don't see these little spheres around your part, it's because you don't have the scale tool selected. So if you just click on the scale tool up in the top left right here, then you should see these spheres, and you can go ahead and drag them, and you should see it start to scale on that axis. And the axis is the sphere itself, basically. It's the direction in which you are scaling the object. There's an x-axis, which is the red one, a z-axis, which is the blue one, and then a y-axis, which is the green one. Anyways, I'm going to keep mine scaled roughly like this, and then down in the properties, if you don't see the properties window, that means you go up to the top right here and click on view, and then go over and make sure that both explorer and properties are turned on, and they should pop up either on the right or left of your screen. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to click on the home tab once again, and let's click on the brick color inside of our properties. I'm going to set this to really red, and then for the material I'm just going to set this over to neon. That way it'll indicate that the player is not supposed to touch this part. So let's go over inside of this part and add in a script just like this. So what we want to do for this is we just write script.parent.touched : connect parentheses function inside of those parentheses, and then we're going to put another pair of parentheses after this function keyword right here, and this is going to take the parameter of hit. So the hit parameter is a value that we're passing to this function whenever our part gets touched, and the touched event fires whenever whatever we put right here actually gets touched by a part while during some sort of movement. So if some moving part touches this part, then it's going to go ahead and connect a function, or the other way around. If this part is moving, then it will, and if it touches another part, it will do the same function right here. So when we say hit right here, and since the player is made up of individual body parts, we can basically access the player from that hit parameter right there. That's a basic way of explaining it. Next, we're going to check if hit.parent : find first child. I'm going to zoom in for you guys right here. Parentheses, quotation marks, humanoid with a capital H. It's very important to use a capital H. Then we're going to say local player. We're going to create a new variable right here, and this is going to be equal to game.players : get player from character, parentheses, quotation marks, oh, not quotation marks, sorry about that, hit.parent inside of here. Let me zoom out now, just like this. So now we're going to check if player then. I'm going to go over and re-explain what all this code does, but for the moment you guys can follow along. So if it's a player, then we simply say player.character : find first child, parentheses, quotation marks, humanoid, just like this, dot health, and this will be equal to 0. So this is going to kill the player whenever they touch on the part. We already explained what this script.parent.touched function does. It basically is just going to run all this code that we put inside of it whenever this part gets touched by a moving object, or the other way around. Then we check if the part that touched the part we're talking about right here, which is our kill part, if that part's parent has something called a humanoid, which all characters do, then we simply get the player, retrieve it from the player's service right here, and if that player exists, then we're going to simply set its health down to 0, which will essentially kill the player. So now down inside of the properties, we just want to make sure that this has anchored set to true, and let's click on play and test it out. So when we go ahead and touch this part right here, you can see that our player dies. And what's cool about this is that we can jump over it, and that is perfect for our obstacle course. Next off, I'm going to add in another part by clicking on this part button right up here, and once again scaling it accordingly. I'm going to make it roughly the same size as our kill part right here, and in fact we can even rename this kill part to Killpart. So we just want to click on this, go down to the properties, click on Killpart, and for this part we're just going to rename it over to our Conveyor. Now let's go ahead and add in a script into this Conveyor part right here. So what I like to do with this is just create a simple variable for our Conveyor, right up here, and this is going to be equal to script.parent. After that, we simply say conveyor.velocity will be equal to conveyor.cframe.lookVector times, and then this will be however fast you want the conveyor to go. I'm going to go for something like 20. However, you can change the size up to whatever you want to, or the speed I mean to say. So this is all that we need to do for our script, and let me explain it. So this is a variable right up here. It's referencing the part that our script is inside of. And this line right here is changing the velocity of our conveyor, which is the speed at which it's moving in, I believe. And this will be equal to the conveyor's look vector. So what the look vector is basically the direction that it's facing. So we get the direction that it's facing, and then we set the speed right here. So down inside of the properties, you just want to make sure that anchored is set to true, and then click on play. So now if we go ahead and touch our conveyor belt, you can see that we will be moving in that direction. So you can implement this into your obstacle course in whichever way you would like to. After that, let's add in a brand new part right to the side right here. And I'm just going to scale this out and make a nice little square right here. After that, I'm going to change the color to, let's see, maybe let's go with blue. So I have a blue part right here. I'm going to rename it to jump part, just like this. Now let's add a script into this jump part. So this is going to be pretty much the same thing as our conveyor belt. So this is going to be our local jump part, which will be equal to script.parent. And then once again, we say jump part.velocity will be equal to, this time we can use something called vector3. So this represents a 3D value with a direction and a magnitude, and we say vector3.new. So what this is going to do is we can put 3 different axes inside of here. 0 for the x-axis, let's go with 10 for the y-axis, and then 0 for the z-axis. And what this is going to do is basically set the speed of the part at which it's moving to upwards. So once again, we just want to make sure we go down to the properties, make sure that this is set to anchored, and then we can click on play. So let's go over here and touch our part. So you can see that we are bouncing very slightly here, but it's not really doing much. And that's because we simply need to up our speed. So let's go back into our script right here and simply change this up to 100 maybe. Let me go back here and touch this, and now as you can see, our trampoline right here, or our jump part, is working perfectly. Now once again, I'm going to click on a new part right here. I'm going to move it over a little bit, and I'm going to scale it out to once again roughly the same size as these ones. And this time I'm going to rename it from part to fade part, just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a fun color like green. After that, let's go ahead and click on a plus icon and click on script. Once again, just to add in another script. So we're going to say script.parent.touched::connect function inside of these parentheses with more parentheses on the side with that same hit. We're going to check if hit.parent::find first child parentheses quotation marks humanoid. We're pretty much writing down the same exact code as we did with the kill part here. Then we're going to say local player will be equal to game.players::get player from character, and this will be hit.parent, and then we check simply if player then. Now here's where it gets fun. What we're going to do is we're going to use something that we call a for loop. Now a for loop, this is something that we use to repeat a set of instructions a specific number of times. So we're going to say local I will be equal to 1, and this is going to be our starting point for our for loop right here. So we're going to start at 1. Let me put a comma right here, and this is going to be the ending point that we go up to. So I'm just going to put this up to, actually let's put this at 1 and put this at 0.1. After that, let's put a comma after this one and then say 0.1, and this number right here is what we call the step increment. So this is going to be whatever rate this is incrementing by to go from 0.1 to 1. After that, we simply say do. So here we're going to say script.parent.transparency, and this is going to be equal to I. After that, we simply say wait, parentheses, and let's do 0.05 or something like that. So we're basically making I start at 0.1, and it's going to go up to 1 by increasing 0.1 every single time. And then we put a wait time in here, so that way it doesn't just go automatically all at once. We want it to be a slight delay in between each little increment right here. Then outside of here, we say script.parent.can collide will be equal to false, and then we say wait maybe 5 seconds, and then we're going to say and do the same thing over again. So we're going to say local I will equal to 1 this time, 0, and then negative 0.1 do. So this is pretty much just going to be the complete opposite right here. And in fact, instead of starting at 0.1, let's start at 0 right there. So now we simply just say script.parent.transparency will be equal to I, and then we're going to say wait 0.05 one more time, where we're going to say script.parent.can collide will now be equal to true. Now there's one more thing that I forgot to add, and let's go up to the top of our script right here, and we're going to say local debounce will be equal to false, and this is going to be false to start off with. And then after our if player then if statement, we're going to check if player and debounce will equal to false. So if debounce is equals to false and the player exists, then we're going to check debounce will now be equal to true, and then down here we're going to set debounce will be equal to false one more time. What this debounce will do is basically a cooldown in between the time that we'll have in order to touch this part. So what's going to happen here is we're going to check if the player exists and our debounce is equal to false, then we're going to loop through these numbers right here, and we're going to set the part's transparency to the correct transparency. After it's completely gone invisible, we are going to set the can collide value to false. We're going to wait 5 seconds, and then we're going to make it reappear. So let's go ahead and click on play to test it out. I'm going to go run over to this green part right here, and we should see it fade out. And after a few seconds, we should see it fade back in. And I believe I forgot to anchor it, so it probably fell through the map in all honesty. So let's go ahead, pause the game, go down inside of our properties and click on anchor, and then click on play one more time. So now walking right over here, let's test it out. It's going to fade out smoothly just like that, and then it's going to go ahead and come right back in a few seconds, just like this. So now you can see that we have a fade out part, a jump part, a nice conveyor part, and a kill part. So now we have all the parts that our players are going to use to try and escape the obby. We now have one more thing to do, and that is create checkpoints. So what we want to do is click on a part right here. This part is going to be our checkpoints. You want to customize it however you want to. I'm going to make mine a square right here, and I'm going to change the color to something like yellow, I think. After that, we want to name the checkpoint after number checkpoint or stage that it's going to represent. So since this one's going to be the first stage, I'm going to rename it to part number 1. And then we simply press right click and group as a folder. And then we rename this folder to checkpoint folder, just like this. And we want to make sure that this part is in fact anchored. Now what you want to do is you want to grab your part, duplicate it with Control and D, and then we're going to move it over. I'm just going to put mine right about here, and I'm just going to rename it over to stage 2. Now you're going to repeat this process for however many stages you have. I'm just going to do these 2. However, if you have something like 20 plus stages, you just want to make sure you go through and add one of these to each one and change the name to the corresponding stage. So after we close off our checkpoints folder, we can go ahead and close off the workspace right here inside of the Explorer. And what we want to do is go over to Server Script Service, click on the plus icon, and find a script. So this script is going to handle all of our checkpoints. So it's important that we put this inside of Server Script Service. Up at the top here, let's start off with a variable for our checkpoints folder. And this is going to be equal to game.workspace.checkpoints folder. After that, we say game.players.player added :connect function, and then outside these parentheses we'll put more parentheses, and this is going to be the player parameter. So when a player joins the game right here and we connect a function to it, we can automatically put that player that joined the game into these parentheses right here, and we can use it as a parameter. So let's press enter, and you should see an end appear right about here. After that, we're going to create a brand new folder inside of the player, and then we're going to call it leader stats. We're going to say local leader stats will be equal to instance.new, parentheses, quotation marks, and this is going to be a folder. Now, leader stats.name is going to be equal to quotation marks, and this is going to be lowercase leader stats, just like that. After that, we say leader stats.parent is going to be equal to player, just like this. So this is going to create a folder, it's going to parent it to the player, and it's going to change its name to the correct name. After that, we're going to do the same thing for something we're going to call a stage value. So it's going to be local stage will be equal to instance.new, parentheses, quotation marks, and this is going to be an int value. Now, an int value stands for an integer value. An integer value and a number value are not the same thing. A number value can go into the decimal points and are what we call floats. However, integer values are mainly only whole numbers, which means they can't go into the decimal points at all. It's only things like 1, 2, 3, or 4, etc. After that, we say stage.name will be equal to stage. This will just let the player know that it is the stage we're talking about. And we're going to say stage.value will start off at 1. Then we say stage.parent, and this is going to be equal to our leader stats folder that we just created. After that, we say player.character added, connect, parentheses, function, more parentheses, and then character as the parameter. So in this case, we're doing the same thing as before with the player, except when that player's character or their avatar gets added into the game, then we're going to connect a function with that avatar. So let's click on enter right here, and you should see a new end appear right below our function right here. Now we're going to go ahead and get a variable for our humanoid. Now the humanoid is kind of like a brain to a human. So the humanoid is what controls the character. It holds all their health, it plays the animations, it does all this stuff. Well, now the humanoid doesn't actually play the animations, but it holds the thing that plays the animation. So it's pretty much the same thing. After that, we say local humanoid will be equal to character, weight for child, parentheses, quotation marks, and this will be humanoid with a capital H. We're going to say wait right here just to make sure we have an ample wait time to make sure we get the player. Here's humanoid. And we simply say character, move to, and this is going to be our checkpoints folder, square brackets, stage.value, and then outside of those square brackets, we're going to put .position, just like this. So this is going to move the character to whatever stage's value we find inside of the checkpoints folder, and it's going to grab the position of that part and basically move the player over to that position. After this, we say humanoid.touched. We're going to connect a function to this. And this is going to take more parentheses, and once again, the same hit as before. So we're going to check if hit.parent equals to our checkpoints folder. So we're going to check if whatever we're hitting is inside of this checkpoints folder. Then we're going to check if toNumber hit.name equals to stage.value plus 1. Then we're going to say stage.value equals to stage.value plus 1, or we can just write plus equals 1, just like this. So let's explain this. So leader stats is a folder that's inside of the player, and we need to create it in order to make sure that the player will have a built-in leaderboard. Now, the stage is an integer value that we stick inside of that leader stats folder. Let me show you by clicking on play real quick. So when you join the game beforehand, you'll notice we didn't really have this bar right up here with this stage value, but now we do, and that's because we created something we call leader stats. And if you open up the player service right here and then open up your avatar's name right here, and then you'll see a folder named leader stats, and this will have our stage inside of it. After all that, we check when our player gets added to the game, our player's character I mean to say. Then we're going to grab the humanoid that's inside of the player's character, and once again that's the thing that basically controls the player's character. And then we simply move the character or teleport them over to the correct stage position, and then once our humanoid gets touched at all, we just want to make sure that we check if whatever touched our humanoid, if that parent is equal to our checkpoints folder, which basically means that our humanoid hit a checkpoint, then we simply check if that checkpoint's name is equal to our stage value and then plus 1, which means it'll be the next checkpoint. Then we simply just up our stage value by 1. This will make sure that we can't go back any stages, or it'll just make sure that we stay on the right stage. So let's go ahead and click on play and test it out. So you can see here that I'm going to spawn on the first stage right here, and that is perfect. And if I go over and touch the second stage, you can see my stage value incremented up to 2, and then once again for the third stage. So putting all these pieces together, you can feel free to make your very own and very first obby inside of Roblox Studio. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video just as much as I did, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.